let's try it out. Let's move on. First, quick question. How many of you recognize this font, which has nothing in common with databases, but anyone recognizes this font? So this is a font that is called 72. So those of you who are working with Fiori 3.0 should immediately recognize, because this is a font that has been developed by SAP to be used in Fiori 3.0. And how many of you know why this font is called 72? Because this was the year when SAP was established. Exactly. So for this great knowledge of SAP history, you are getting this developer socks from SAP. OK, so let me start with a quick introduction. Actually, Oliver did part of that for me already. My name is Vitaliy Rudnytskiy, or Vitaliy Rudnytskiy, whatever you want to pronounce it. But usually I go by my Twitter handle, which is a GitHub repo name as well, Sigismundovich. So if you have no idea what to talk about, just discuss why Sigismundovich, and this is a good icebreaker for us to start talking. I'm one of, actually, I am SAP employee, as you can guess. And I'm one of SAP developer advocates. If you never heard about any developer advocates at SAP before, no surprise, this is our official name since last week. So there are 10 of us working globally at SAP, and we are part of SAP SAP Community and Developer Relations organization, which is a part of Office of CTO of SAP. In my case, I'm looking at all things data. And if you are interested, actually last week we published the new page for our data management for developers. So if you have any feedback about this web page, then just come and talk to me. There are many more things that I'm sharing with Oliver besides just being SAP employee. I used to be SAP mentor as well, but differently than Oliver, I'm based in Poland, not in Germany. How many of you know where Wrocław is? OK, so it's improving year after year. And similarly, like Oliver, I'm one of SAP Inside Track organizers. It's just that I'm organizing this in Wrocław. Here are my pictures with our speakers from this and previous year. And this is the moment for me to do a little bit of advertisement of our SAP Inside Track in Wrocław. It's only 3 hours driving from Berlin. We have direct train now going to Wrocław as well. So if you need anyone to convince you, then I would suggest actually these 2 gentlemen who are present here to ask about their experience. And I believe they will be glad to share. So you are welcome. Now to the point. As I mentioned, I am a SAP employee, therefore I need to start with the usual SAP disclaimer. Everyone read? Everyone understood? Great. OK, so how did we get here? Why are we talking about multimodal databases? So how many of you remember SAP running pre-relational database era? So how many of you remember running SAP on navigational database, hierarchical one? Exactly, R2. So now I know 2 guys in the world who I met who've seen it. But luckily for the rest of us, there was relational model developed in the mid of 1970s, which gave the birth to SQL programming language that we all use and love till these days. And this is where relational databases started by the end of 1970s, right? So it was DB2 by IBM first in 1979, and then another company with a red logo that started another popular, in some areas, relational database in 1980. 1980s is as well the huge improvement in personal computers, and this is where desktop-based RDBMSs made it even more popular, right? So even my wife, who studied economy, she knows Microsoft Excel, and she knows what SQL is, thanks to all these desktop-based RDBMSs. 1990s is another important milestone because of the whole shift from client-server architecture to from mainframes to client-server architecture. This is where SAP actually was one of the companies heading this revolution on the market. And this is where these relational databases became even more popular because we had to migrate from mainframes with these hierarchical databases to more modern architectures. 1990s as well, for those of you developers, brought another interesting concept, object-oriented programming, which is supposed to be, solution to all the software problems the very same way as functional programming is the solution these days. But there was one issue that it's really difficult to match objects into relations. Sorry, I haven't recognized that, probably those of you in the back seat probably see only from half screen up, right? And you don't see half screen down. Okay, so that's why we needed not only relational databases, but as well to satisfy this object-oriented programming, as well object-oriented database management programming. But this is where things really started to be interesting. So how many of you remember Y2K? And this is kind of like just by looking at hair, I can guess, or lack of hair, I can guess who recognizes this and who doesn't, right? So Y2K is the famous problem of year 2000. And this is where if you would be living in the US and you would buy your laptop, you would get this sticker on your laptop. Unfortunately, we don't have this for stickers here today. Remember to turn off your laptop on December 31st, 1999. Why? Because most of the applications were written in 1970s, in 1980s, with the assumption that 2 digits year representation will be enough for the rest of the life of this software. Right? Actually, there were people who made quite some money on that, selling some guidebooks, how to survive, and or selling newspapers that the doomsday is coming on January 1st. But why I'm mentioning this? Because it was another moment when this whole movement from mainframes to new architectures happened, because in mainframes, in COBOL, most of the applications were written, just having this 2-digit representation for the year. But year 2000, or the beginning of 2000s, was actually a beginning of new millennia. It was really, really, really fun time. This is where I pretty much joined the job market. So how many of you remember 1 terabyte club? So this was a lead group of SAP customers whose systems were mind-blowing, and they were more than 1 terabyte size. The biggest at that time, I believe, was Nestle, and at that time they had BW system that was 7 terabytes of data. Again, it was mind-blowing as far as I remember. But now, these days, it sounds like it was tera years ago, right? Because with the rise of web, we came to the new requirement. We came to the requirements of storing petabytes of data. So how many of you have seen 1 petabyte of data? No one. OK, I had to experience this 1 petabyte of data. I used to work at HP in Silicon Valley at that time. And we had our own not SAP-based data warehouse in Cupertino office there in California. And then the whole IT was moving to Austin, to Texas. And basically, they were moving this data warehouse from the data center that was in our office to Austin. And the whole day, it was like an earthquake, right? So if you've been to Silicon Valley, you know that this is earthquake zone. So you would think that this is just a regular shaking. But actually, it was trucks after trucks coming and shifting and moving hardware that was storing this 1 petabyte of data. So 1 petabyte of data is really earth-shaking, believe me. But even more, with the introduction of the mobile phones, we needed to rethink the way we are storing and processing data once again. I still remember this year 2007 when the friend of mine, colleague of mine in HP in Cupertino, who was a huge fan of Apple, told me about the release of iPhone. I had no idea why would it be revolutionary, according to this guy, and he proved me to be wrong, once again, it was, right? So why do we talk about mobile? Why did it change the way we worked, even with enterprise system, is because this is the one that introduced so-called consumerization of IT, right? Because before that, it was very often, I used to be data warehouse BW consultant myself, right? We would write the query, and then you go for coffee. You come back after 20 minutes. OK, the query is still not finished. So you go for coffee once again. And this is how I got coffee addicted, right? Just by working with BW. Now, how many of you can look or wait for more than 3 seconds? Yeah? Even Alexa cannot stand, you're impatient, right? Because 3 seconds, and then you need a response. You need a reaction. So we could not store the data in the old way just to get this response from these old databases anymore. And this is where the whole revolution with so-called NoSQL has started. Maybe I should put it like that, right? OK. Maybe I shouldn't do that. You see, I put the wallpaper as Oliver asked. But now I just need to go back to the place where we were. So how many of you familiar with NoSQL concept? Or how many of you have heard about that? OK. Just a few of you, but basically NoSQL is the way to process not only SQL. So it is not NoSQL anymore. It's not only SQL data, because to satisfy this needs to store petabytes of data and process this and get the results in seconds. We needed this NoSQL only databases, right? And then 2010 started, and this is even more funny time with the rise of IoT, Internet of Things, because now IoT put yet another requirements for data management, for data processing. Now we are talking about processing data on the move, right? So this is processing streaming data. And by the way, if you haven't heard about NoSQL before, this is the way how this term was coined, right? So you would write your CV. Most of you shake the hand. You have no idea what SQL is. And this is how NoSQL was born. Seriously, though, this NoSQL revolution gave the explosion of different data vendors and data management software. So now we have relational DOM, no relational DOM. We have graph data. We have memory caches. We have search engines. We have in-memory processing, and so on and so forth, right? So SAP HANA actually here as well. But before that, you had pretty much like 4 databases, and they were ruling the market. Now you have this whole load of all the different databases on the market, and this is one of the way to represent what is going on the market and to help you to navigate this. What it cost is as well the change in the way some programs are being suggested to be developed to so-called polyglot persistence adoption. So what polyglot persistence is that basically once you are developing your software, now you have all these different data stores that you can or even should use for different kind of data. And guilty as charged, for example, for our own IoT, SAP IoT application enablement data store, for example, we are using 3 different data stores. We are using S3 or Swift as an object store for all the data ingestion, and then we are moving this to Kafka for all the real-time streaming processing, and then we are moving this to HANA for all the aggregation and all the data representation, data querying. So what's next? Where are we moving? And this is where some of the guys are now talking about this multimodel databases. Why? Because basically it's easy to do the whiteboard where you put 3 different data stores, Swift, Kafka, Cassandra, supposed to be Cassandra, and then HANA. But now you as a developer, you need to interface with all the 3 different systems. You need to know all 3 different APIs, 3 different SQL syntaxes, or maybe no SQL at all. So what are multimodal databases? These are the ones that can serve all these different kind of data, but with one integrated engine. And there are true multimodal databases, so those that were built ground up with this assumption. And then there are all the general purpose databases that got this multimodal option included now. So if we are talking about the native multimodal, then there are 4 major players on the market. And guess what? I'm going to talk about OrientDB. So how many of you have heard about OrientDB before? OK, 3 of you. Everyone else, are you working in SAP space by any chance? Because OrientDB is now one of the SAP databases. We accidentally acquired this company. It happened. Actually, we were buying Calidius Cloud as a marketing automation software, sales automation software, and it happened that they owned OrientDB, and therefore we have this now as a part of SAP as well, and that's why I brought some stickers that I'm going to put there as well. Yeah. So OrientDB is an open source, so now it is another open source from SAP, but I can read from your faces, show me something live, finally, right? So let's try to do that. I do have this as a Docker image, right? So I have started it already. It would take about 3 minutes, just to download. So obviously I didn't do that. I've done this before, and now I just need to Docker start. That's why I love doing live demos, because there are always issues, and then there are people always laughing. OK, Docker start B5, Docker log, Docker logs. Just want to make sure that database started. It did, right? So now it should provide me the interface. I just need to know the IP of my Docker machine, because this is older Windows machine. So I need this IP address, and now I can go here and look at the port 2480, right? So now I have this OrientDB database running locally on my machine, and actually the guys who invented or started development of this software, they are from Italy, but yeah, hi there. And that's why if you look into their documentation, you would understand why examples that they are using. Luca owns car. Car has model Ferrari. Car has color red. And indeed, Luca is one of the inventors of this database, and indeed he owns red Ferrari because he's from Italy, right? And but in this case, I didn't download the cars database. Actually, there are some examples available on the web. And I don't own red Ferrari, but I do own an account on Untapped. If you don't know this social network, this is about beer lovers. And this is why I checked in 6 beers last night. So I downloaded so-called OpenBeerDB already. And let me just connect to this database, right? So as I mentioned, this OrientDB was the very first actually one that started this multi-model development. And if we look into the data that we have in there, so easiest way will be to look at schema. And everyone who is familiar with NoSQL, the very first question would be, hold on. The whole promise of NoSQL is that there is no schema in the database, right? Actually, this is kind of like schemaless, semi-schema, and schema-full database, which means that you can enforce, like in regular relational database, full schema, or you can start with the empty project and add any data, any attributes of any data types in there. So in this case, for example, we have brewery, meaning that I can select data from this brewery class. And again, you see the table. And then again, those of you NoSQL purists would start shouting just like, what do you mean table representation of no structured data? Well, we humans still read data in tabular way, but if you look at the way this data is being stored underneath, meaning if we look at the raw data, it is actually JSON semi-structured data, right? But these guys, they went a step further, comparing, for example, to MongoDB, and they allowed this data to be connected as well. So which means that one document can store a link to another document. And that's why, actually, we can as well explore these connections in very graph way, right? So if I would look where country equal Germany, but first I need to remove the output. So, okay, I don't know all the German breweries yet, so it would be easier for me to go with Poland. Oops, only 6 breweries. But there is an explanation to this. This database, it is open database, but it stopped being developed in 2010. Since then, Poland has been facing, explosion of all the mini breweries as well. But for the moment here, we still have only 6. But what we can do right now is that we can look, for example, at Varka, and we can start exploring in very graph way that Varka has a beer that is called Varka Strong, and this Varka Strong, it has a style, American style lager, right? So you've seen that we looked at this data in relational way, we looked at them as a document, and now we are looking at them as the explorable graph connected data. Okay, so let me move back. So if any one of you would like to try it out, as I mentioned, there will be stickers right there. It is open source, so you can easily just download and run this in your Docker container. So it is as well object-oriented. It supports geospatial data, and you've seen that it has this SQL interface, right? So why, once again, NoSQL? And we are talking about the SQL interface because, again, we went through this movement from NoSQL, where it meant we have no SQL at all, to NoSQL, I do know SQL, to this NoSQL movement where like we don't want SQL anymore, then not only SQL, and now just like actually SQL is the only data manipulation language I can speak. So no, it is SQL, right? So talking about the SQL interface, and this is where I promised Oliver that this presentation will be non-SAP, but I do need some other databases to have a little bit of demo as well, and this is why I brought SAP HANA, which in most of the minds is usual relational database. Okay, it is in memory, it is column organized, but it is still relational database. So how many of you have worked with SAP HANA before? Okay, so those of you who didn't raise your hands, the good news, you can try SAP HANA by yourself or for yourself as well. Actually, it is the database that was classified as the leader in so-called translytical data platforms. How many of you have heard about translytical before today? I can play smart, huh? So it is the winning translytical database, and what translytical database means is that you combine transactional and analytical workload in one engine, right? That's why we are promising real-time enterprise or real-time intelligent enterprise right now, but real-time enterprise. But one of the important things here is that it supports advanced analytics, and advanced analytics means that basically it supports as well non-trivial and non-relational data within the database as well. The thing that I mentioned is that you can use this HANA Express edition, and HANA Express edition is a free one that you can download and use even in production up to 32 gigabytes of RAM, with one caveat: there is no enterprise support for the free edition, right? So once again, I hear you are saying, show us some live demo. So for this live demo, I'm going to use, as I mentioned, this not this one. This HANA Express that in my case, my laptop is not powerful enough, but I do have free HANA Express on Google Cloud Platform. And if you haven't used Google Cloud Platform yet, the good news is that if you create this developer account there, they will give you $300 to play with. And then if you remember to stop HANA Express after you are using that, so they are not calculating this as a usage time when you are not using that, then it was enough for 8 months for me just to run this database for free. And in this case, my session has expired, obviously. But let's have a look how HANA supports this multimodal option, right? So I did preload some data in there. And let us start with some very relational tables. So there are 2 relational tables from the Marvel dataset. I found this at some university website. Unfortunately, not all of this data is clean enough, but basically what it has is that it has the nodes. Oops. So it has this nodes relational table, and nodes relational table just describes all the superheroes that are existing in Marvel universe. So how many Marvel superheroes do you know? More or less. 1? 7? How many of them do you think are there? How many? Come on. 70? 250? Okay, let's do the count on this table. 6,200. And not all of them are even there. Because I don't know if you know, for example, the most famous German superheroes from Marvel Universe. Anyone? Okay, I need to look into my... so the most famous is the Nightcrawler. So this is an X-Men, and he is German. Yeah, so he is #1. But because we are in Berlin, who is the most one and only Marvel superhero who was born in Berlin? I learned this yesterday. Katrina Van Horn, by the nickname Mankiller. And she was born in Berlin, and as far as I could check on this fun page, she is the one and only who was born in Berlin, right? So we have these Marvel node superheroes, but then we have as well the table that is called edges, and these edges, they show who of these superheroes appeared in which movie or in which comic. And therefore now, if they appeared in the same comic book or in the same movie, we can say that these 2 superheroes are connected. Basically, they are like the Facebook of Marvel superheroes, right? This is the social network. And just because we have these nodes and we have these connections, so now HANA will allow you to connect this into something that is called, surprise, surprise, graph workspace. And this graph workspace actually now would allow you to see all the same data, but in the graph way, right? So this is the subset of the social network of the Marvel superheroes. And now if we want to know, for example, if our man killer by the name Katrina from Berlin ever met another famous German superhero, Nightcrawler, we can run this this short path graph algorithm. Now, if you would try to do this in SQL on these relational tables, you can imagine what kind of SQL you would need to write. But now with the graph workspace, you can run this native graph algorithms on top of relational data, and immediately we know that Mankiller never met Nightcrawler, but they know Sandman, who is the guy in between. Okay, another example would be processing semi-structured data. sorry, I ran out of time. Can I have 3 more minutes? I don't know if I was given equal opportunity comparing to the previous guys, but there was a question from one of our SAP mentors on the Twitter, just like, hey, but can HANA process JSON data, right? So JSON is semi-structured data. And in this case, it was Google Takeout. So how many of you are familiar with this company by the name Google? OK, quite a few of you. For everyone else, if you don't know that, they know about you. The reason they know about you is because you are using their product. And as you know, with the introduction of GDPR and RODO, they now need to share all the information they know about you. Actually, the very same way SAP needs to share information that we have about you. So if you go to your SAP people account, you can go to privacy settings and you can download everything that SAP has about you, right? The very same way, there is a service that is called Google Takeout, and you go there and you can download all the information that Google has about you. And this is the one that I actually downloaded, that is called Locations. And these locations I downloaded yesterday. So I put it somewhere, work, spatial, takeout, location history. OK. So this is our location history data. If we look at that, so this is the way Google would share your location history with you, right, in JSON format. So obviously, everyone right now understands JSON format, understands Unix timestamps, and understands how latitude and longitude works, and so on and so forth. But basically, I loaded this data already into HANA. And what I've done is that I created some location history data out of that, basically by parsing this JSON and as well doing some recalculations, like, for example, what timestamp, how timestamp should be represented. And then there are different things that we can do with this data, but one that I was working on till 1 a.m. last night is can we reproduce the route based on this data. So let me just go to SQL and then make sure that we have the right schema. We do. And yesterday was August 30th, right? August 30 till August 30. So basically what we've done right now is that I took all these points from location history for 1 day, for yesterday, and then I concatenated them into this geospatial data that is called line string. So basically it is a line that is ordered by timestamp. And now, unfortunately, HANA doesn't have geo data visualization anymore, but we can use some external services for that. Right? Pabam. So you can see yesterday I started from Wrocław. I stopped by Javor to pick up my daughter who wanted to go to Berlin as well. So they are doing some shopping with my wife right now. And then we were driving to the borderline. This is, as you can see, it is not that I was flying straight. It's just that data roaming kicked in, right? And I didn't have it on. So I was driving regular highway, no worries. And then about here, I realized that data roaming is off. So I turned it on. And then we arrived to Berlin. Bam, 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 bam. So this is where my hotel is. Here, close to Zoo Berlin. And then, obviously, yesterday I was coming for Stammtisch. So taking a bus, coming here for Stammtisch, then trying to find it out. That's why you can see this zigzag here, because I missed the restaurant, and then, just going all the way back to my hotel, and actually departing bus 1 stop further just to have a little bit of walk and to think about the demo for today, right? So The very last thing is that, as I mentioned, there is no geospatial data visualization in HANA, so I tried to build my own. And this is the one that I am connected here right now. This is the last demo, so no worries.
Another demo, you said 3 minutes.
Oh, I said 3 demos. Yes, PA. So let me just run my own visualization. So this data is coming from HANA. This is the shape of all the continents. Oops, sorry. Wrong way. Let me run it in one line. So this is the result of SQL query visualizing geospatial data for you. Unfortunately, it is not very flexible and maybe not very readable, and it is quite coarse, but you can visualize geospatial data from SAP this way. And with this optimistic demo, I would like to thank you for your attention. Sorry, Oliver, for taking over time, but I have an excuse, sorry, not excuse, but a little bit thank you, not for you, but for your little one.
Oh.
So you know that Oliver is the new father.
Yes.
For the 3rd time.
Yes.
But still.
That's not new.
Sorry, it was in Google, right? So
yeah? Okay.
This newborn will get a teddy bear.
That's cute, thank you.
From SAP.
Okay.